Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're doing a Tabloid Times podcast. I have with me here Mason Cook from Exile.
We've all kind of been driven into exile. It's been a chaotic few months ever since that dark day where the big media just took us out.
Yeah.
They got the government.
It was a major setback. But let's not dwell on that, because I think the important fact is that we're back, and that although we're in our own individual bunkers with bulletproof glass and Kevlar vests for our own protection because we've been so persecuted, the main thing is that we're still finding ways to get out the truth.
Yes, and that is what's important.
Right. We will stop at nothing to spread enlightenment to the world. We are the world's only hope for the truth, the Tabloid Times.
Yes.
And to bring you the inside scoop on reality today, we're going to talk about, of course, a contentious, highly important, and extraordinarily relevant topic, daylight savings time, which we, not too long ago, just left or entered. I'm not sure which one it is. Maybe, Mason, our time expert, you can help us understand that a little more, and give me some insight as to what this whole fallback thing really means.
All right, so fallback means that clocks are turned back 1 hour or after daylight savings time is ended. However, in reality, this is more of a scheme because the founding fathers didn't get enough sleep, so they just created this whole thing to give themselves 1 extra hour of sleep.
I see. So the founding fathers created this scheme of changing clocks to get more sleep, but it seems like it's an utter failure in that daylight savings time, it switches in the spring where you lose the hour. Isn't that kind of completely against the point?
Well, yes, it is, Luca. This was more to appease the science crowd that claims that this is unsustainable and just messes everything up. Really, it was just sort of a way to appease them while also keeping that extra hour of sleep. However, many, like myself, in the time community really think they should have gone further with this, that it should be a monthly thing.
So we should be switching our clocks every month. Would that be going back and forth a lot? Because I think I would not appreciate the constant switching back and forth, especially as I assume the audience would agree with me. The spring forward is brutal. And if we were to do that 6 times a year, I don't know. I might not think it would be worthwhile to be employed at that point. So,
No.
You know what I'm saying? It just wouldn't be worth it. So,
which is why you only fall back every month.
Okay. So instead of switching and giving in to the crowd who think that we need to do that, we just take a bold, decisive, different approach in that we fall back to basically give ourselves an extra hour every month.
That is correct. Yes.
So we basically just give ourselves more sleep.
Yes.
And what's the downside?
Well, there really isn't anything.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with this, but some critics believe that it might be unsustainable for the U.S. government to keep giving out hours at a rate like that, which is why we only do it once a year and then just taking it back anyway. What do you say to those who think that we couldn't keep doing it? We couldn't keep it up.
Well, many would often view it as like another government handout, and I personally wouldn't view it as a government handout because I feel like a government handout is something the government has to physically hand you, like
Like
with food
cash.
stamps. Yeah, cash. They're physically handing you those. Whereas time, how do you physically handle time?
You can give someone a new clock that has, a different hour on it, but they're clearly not doing that. So, yeah, I see what you're saying in that vein. So another question that's been bugging me about this whole daylight savings time thing is that, we talk about saving daylight like it's so important. Can you elaborate for those who are not in the time community in terms that they can understand the importance of balancing daylight and nightlight?
Yeah. I mean, for a while we actually did do nightlight savings time, and many like myself do think that it would be good to maybe start returning to that. However, the main problem that came with it is the fact that it caused random hours to just be night. Like, for example, there was one day back in 1873 where it was perfectly sunny, and then just in the middle of the afternoon, it just became night. And then an hour later, it was day again.
So it's as if like a solar eclipse came through.
Well, not necessarily, because the sun was still out, but it was just night.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So, nightlight savings time does have virtue, but it's less stable than daylight savings time in that it creates more sporadic results. Are there any like I know nightlight saving time has been around for quite some time and has a much richer history than daylight savings time. Again, for the non-experts, can you go into I remember you telling me about this, but the details are not coming to my mind. There were some major historical events that were affected by this nightlight savings time and ultimately caused it to be phased out. Can you elaborate on that?
So, history that have been affected by nightlight savings. Notably, the Protestant Reformation came out because Martin Luther was just in a constant state of eternal night in where he lived in Germany, and then all of a sudden it was just suddenly day again, and then he reread the Bible because he couldn't at that point because it was constantly night, so he couldn't
Right,
read.
you can't read in the dark. It's bad for your eyes. Everybody knows this.
Yeah. Not to mention, if we go back even earlier, many wars that couldn't be finalized at night because they just read, and so many wars were actually prolonged due to savings time. Notably, the revolt wars between Greeks and the Egyptians that caused this. The Hittites were infamous for just having prolonged periods of night, which is why they fought so much, because they just couldn't read the peace treaties.
That makes sense. So a lot of people wonder why the 30 Years' War was so long and so bloody. Do you see the irony in that the Reformation was inspired by these glitches in nightlight savings time, and then the prolongation of the war as a result of this same cause?
Yes, I can see the irony. The 30 Years' War was also very much prolonged by nightlight savings in its own time. Like, there's just many historical events you don't think about that were greatly prolonged by this. It's not just the 30 Years' War, the 7 Years' War, the 7 Days' War, the 10 Days' War, the American Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the American Civil War, along with the Russian Civil War, the Chinese Civil War, the Wakandan Civil War. There were so many.
Yikes! Wow. I didn't realize. I mean, I knew the extent of the effect was large. I didn't realize it affected that much. That's mind-boggling. But all right. So I think we've effectively addressed daylight savings time and nightlight savings time, and I think our viewers at home understand from this podcast at this point that the most effective use of your next 15 minutes of time would be a letter to write to your congressman or woman and convince them to re-implement nightlight savings time, and if not that, at least give us more fallbacks in terms of daylight savings time, because more sleep is better, and I don't understand how that couldn't be a bipartisan issue. All right, and
Yes.
now that we're here, let's we've each been working on our own field reports, kind of undercover because we've had to be, and we're in non-ideal situations in our bunkers, but I feel like now that we have this moment where we're exposing truth to the world, Mason, would you care to, I have something ready in just a minute, but would you care to share what you've been working on and the latest plot that you've uncovered? Because we can get into more of the details in future episodes and stuff, but I think it's really important for our readers to gain an awareness of this type of stuff so they can know to look for it as we elaborate it and provide more details as the story develops.
Yes. So one of the big stories I've been working on, because I'm not going to disclose the location I've been exiled to, but it's pretty far away. But
right, there's a good number of miles between us right now, and that's probably for the better for our safety, but it does make our operations more difficult.
yeah. But I got a tip. It was from the guy that I ran into in the supermarket, and he mentioned that the city of El Centro, California, it doesn't exist.
It does not exist.
It's just put on maps. Yeah, to fool you into thinking that there's a city there. However, in reality, it's just a government base. It's actually where the Illuminati secretly controls the governments of both California and Baja California. So I've been looking into that, and it's some fascinating stuff. All of the lengths they've gone to try to convince you that El Centro exists, but it doesn't. It just doesn't exist.
It does not exist.
Yeah.
It's this Illuminati headquarters for domination of the west coast of the United States and Mexico.
Yep.
Yikes.
That is correct.
Wow. Well, we can get more into that later. I'd like to share mine, and then we can just have a few closing thoughts and wrap up this From Beyond the Grave Tabloid Times podcast. I would say that the most interesting development that I've been working on is that I've been in contact with my correspondents from sub-Saharan Africa, and what they're telling me is that the Saharan desert is actually moving to sub-Saharan Africa at an alarming rate, while sub-Saharan Africa is moving to Saharan Africa at an even faster rate.
So, they're switching places.
Yeah, they're switching places. It's a tectonic it's a continental rotation that we're seeing in Africa, and it could definitely have a lot of importance in geopolitical affairs, as you can imagine. And I'm sure it's going to cause major problems for the airline industry very soon. But so be very careful if you're flying to Cairo or something. I would advise that you fly the plane yourself. That's probably the best way to get it done. You can't rely on the pilots who've been trained to do it, because they'll just stick with their old ways, and as the continent is moving, they can't keep up.
Yeah, no. That can be very problematic at times like these. Be especially careful with cities that are closer to the traditional boundary of Saharan and sub-Saharan Africa.
Right. Interior cities, especially those in like the Central African Republic or Chad, are probably fine, but South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, Ghana, I would exercise extreme caution.
Yes.
Alrighty, I think that about does it. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our viewers before we leave the inside scoop at this point, Mason?
Yeah, I have just a couple. I know we haven't been active. Thank you for sticking with us in this very troubling time. It's taken quite a bit to shake the government and the media and everything else off of our tail, and we really want to thank you guys for sticking with us. Don't worry. Edition 49 will be out soon. We can guarantee that.
That's right. Edition 49 will be out. This podcast will be out. Continue to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And this is it for the Tabloid Times Beyond the Grave podcast. I'm Lucas Hauser, reporting from an undisclosed bunker.
And I'm Mason Cook, also reporting from a different undisclosed bunker.
Thank you, and good night.